our planning commissioners, give them wisdom and knowledge to do what is best for all citizens. Amen.
Did you turn the mic on? I did. Thank you. Rick's
We have roll call, please.
Tracy?
Here.
Dennis?
Here.
Andrea?
Here.
Kevin?
Here.
Nick?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Rick is absent. And is Corey coming in today? Okay, so both Rick and Corey will be out today.
Thank you. All right. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes for the July 10th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting? Any corrections or discussion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, for correspondence, has everyone seen that there is going to be a, the registration for the Planning Michigan Conference? If anyone would like to attend, please contact the clerk. I think any training is good training. And if you haven't done your training yet for this year, this might be a good one to attend. So it's Wednesday, September 25th through Friday, September 27th. All right.
Anybody plan on going?
I'm not going. I'm out of town. I would go if I wasn't out of town. When I went last time, there were so many different classes and different things. It was great. And you could pick and choose and go for what, is important to your town, what applies to you. And it was a really well done conference. So if anyone could ever make it, even in the future, you learn so much. And you also get to talk with other planners there. So, and I saw Alex was there, the last one.
Yeah, this year.
Yeah. All right. Public comment. No one from the public is here. Any late agenda items? All right. No introductions. All right. New business. We're going to discuss the proposed text amendment to cover approval of temporary dwellings as a result of fire or other force of nature. So Alex, were you?
Yeah, I mean, I looked it over. I mean, it's for all intents and purposes, you're just removing the zoning board of appeals from the decision, which is fine with me. It could go in front of the planning commission or administratively, which is kind of what the draft proposal says. But for the most part, it's essentially the same thing. We're talking about 1%, 1 year, 6 months. So yeah, I don't think it needs to be the zoning board of appeals. So you could remove that, and it could be a request that could come in front of the planning commission, or it could be handled administratively. It's up to you guys on that. I've seen it different ways. A lot of places just do it administratively, but depending on staff but if you don't want to, I mean,
Administratively makes sense because of the time frame, right?
That was the point of change.
That was the point of changing it. You don't have to wait for that next month's meeting to roll around.
right.
Yeah, if you move it to planning commission, any better.
Yeah. The ideal was to expedite a
Right.
decision. I mean, the likelihood anybody would turn those people down in that condition, not likely,
Gotta take a look at the mayor.
right?
Right. All right. So is everyone in agreement with that? Okay. All right. So we're going to amend that ordinance.
I think by the requirements,
I
we
don't-
have to pass the resolution and move it to the zoning.
Township board.
administrator.
Township board or just the supervisor? We talked about supervisor.
As far as approval, it
At
would go to the
ZBA.
supervisor, but would it not have to go in front of the township board to have the ordinance changed?
Yeah.
You have to have a public hearing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So do we just need to make a recommendation
Yeah, you
to
make
the
a
township
recommendation,
board?
You're probably providing this text and
Okay,
they can act on it.
Just on a motion, like move to approve the text and move it.
Yeah.
Because they're,
Okay. Yeah. For them to look at it and then they can approve it. And in other cases, the board can take up, the township board can also take up their, a text amendment themselves if they want to, but in this case, it's coming from the PC. So,
but we would have to have a public hearing before it goes to the township board.
Township board has to have a
oh,
public hearing.
township board.
Oh, township board?
yeah, we're just gonna say, we're gonna recommend it. We're gonna create,
Yeah.
say a motion to recommend it, then it'll go in front of the
You just put a
board.
notice out.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Okay.
Motion to recommend the ordinance update for temporary dwellings and emergency to the township board.
Support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion?
Just add to your motion that section 10.5.
Section 10.5.
Excuse me, that 10.5 is zoning board of appeals. So you're amending,
We're making a recommendation to amend 10.5.
then where is this going to go?
To the township board.
No, no,
Well,
no.
no, I mean,
In the zoning order.
yeah,
Oh.
so we're in the zoning, because you're not putting in the township board of,
Oh, so we have
zoning
to
board of appeals.
remove
You have to
10.5.
Move it into
Yeah.
another location, so it could be in your, I'm scrolling through here, but
I
Like-
recommend it to section 2.
yeah, it could be just general provisions, just,
Right.
that would generally be the place, or general exceptions. Either or, I would probably prefer, general provisions, where this would go, and it would essentially be, probably section 2, 3, 3, 4, so that's what I would, the next one down. And, actually, it should be alphabetical theoretically, so temporary dwelling, so everything would slide down, and then what would happen is if anything's hyperlinked to these general provision sections in the zoning ordinance, given the fact that Roe created it, I would have to have our copywriter go through, make sure it's changed, because wherever it cites all the other sections after, so temporary dwelling in an emergency, it'd be T. Oh boy, we have all kinds of stuff. You know what? You just have 2, 3, 4, because this is not alphabetical. It starts off alphabetical and then falls apart.
Yeah.
So I would just do section 2, 3, 4, temporary dwelling units, and general provisions.
So I look at section 13.7. Amendments and changes, the proposal for an amendment to the zoning ordinance text initiated by the township board, planning commission, or ZBA upon filing with the township zoning administrator a resolution duly adopting and identifying the proposed amendment. And then the review process, the clerk would put out a notice for the time and place the planning commission would hold a public hearing. Well, I just understood the township board was going to do the public hearing.
Yeah,
Township board doesn't necessarily have to have a public hearing because their meetings are public anyways. What
Yeah.
they're doing is taking your recommendation and saying yes or no to it.
yeah, that's what your planning, that's what your zoning ordinance says. However, most places don't follow that rule, but you guys could follow, you just would follow that rule. But knowing that the elected body isn't weighing in on it, it's up to you guys if you want to send it to them just for comments. You don't necessarily have to, but it's how you just want to handle it. But otherwise, you just have a public hearing and then it can go back to you guys. So I don't know how you guys have handled it before because I've never done it with you guys, but some places have what they have in the zoning ordinance and they also have things they've done in the past. So,
So who would write the resolution for this? Would that be the planning commission? Would that be you? Would that be us?
sorry,
Who would write the resolution for this?
resolution?
Yeah, don't we have to have a resolution?
That's where I'm confused.
So what section are you citing there, Dennis?
13.7, I think you said?
13.7.
Amendments,
Yeah.
amendments and changes.
And then A and B, B says the clerk would notify the public 15 days in advance
Yeah.
for the regular planning commission. I don't have any problem either way, because the change is so straightforward. But I'm a little confused as to even how to write a resolution. A motion's a heck of a lot easier.
Yeah, 13.7. Resolution notification, to me, it's all the same. It's just semantics. Unless there's something different in your definitions chapter about resolution and notice, but I mean, you're essentially telling the general public.
I don't care how we do it. I mean,
Yeah, your notice of resolution, you're just going to include the text. You're just going to put what was there and what you're proposing and what section, as we decide, section 234, and you put a notice out. That I mean, we do this all the time for our community. So I mean,
Is that what we normally do, Ida?
You have to put notice in the paper saying that this section is there's a text amendment to this section. And it would say that you're revoking section 10.5,
5.
and you are creating a new text under Article 2, Section 2.34. And then the wording of that text amendment would be there. And then we publish it, and then you have a public hearing. The public has the right to come in and make any comments if they wish. You would hear from the township board if they have comments.
someone could appeal it, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a process. In fact, the last amendments, there was a long list that were done because we had just adopted the master plan, and there were a lot of amendments to the zoning ordinance, so we did a whole bunch of text amendments at one time.
The resolution part would just be after the meeting, if it gets approved in September meeting, you just put on the paper that this notice has been changed and that people have up until this date, 30 days from the time of the meeting to make a petition or question it or bring it to the clerk. And that's it. So one, we have the draft, we put the notice out, we hold the meeting, we hear it, and then if it gets passed, which I assume it would, then you just put a resolution that it's been made and approved in the paper, and then I have my copy person make sure we take that out and put this in and make sure the table's correct, because the zoning board of appeals section 2.5 gets pulled out and 2.6 goes in its place and all the other stuff. So it's kind of rudimentary.
Right.
Yeah. So
And it usually does come to the zoning administrator, because the zoning administrator has always typed up the notice for the paper, and then the clerk approves it, and then it goes into the paper. So that's how we do it here.
So we just need to send you a resolution.
No, the resolution's after, she has a text
after.
now.
Okay.
I would, in this case, draft up the notice.
Okay.
You guys can look at it if you want, or you can, or whatever, it's not a big deal.
Yeah,
It goes in the
and before I
paper,
do that, it would
for the
go
next
through Dennis
meeting.
and you.
and then you just have a public hearing for it, and then
Okay.
you can make any change there if you want.
So come September, you would have a public hearing and nobody shows up and nobody really cared and, or whatever, and you just go forward with the amendment.
Let me ask a question. Why would it have to move to 2.34, Alex, when all you're going to do is change one word or one portion that says zoning board of appeals? You
It's
wouldn't
still in
want to change.
section, it's still in the zoning board of
Article
appeals.
Article
Is
10
there
is
zone-
the zoning
Here,
board.
look at
of
the zoning
appeals.
board.
Okay, I didn't scroll up far enough. Okay,
Yeah,
that makes
you-
sense. I understand.
You want to take it out of Article 10
Yeah.
and put it in Article 2.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
So to make sure, I struck the part about consulting with the building department. So it's totally up to the supervisor in the latest language, which I put out by email.
The zoning administrator still has to review it though, because I have to make sure that the temporary dwelling goes within the appropriate setbacks.
That would fall under the standard temporary dwelling ordinances. All this is really changing is the sign off being the supervisor.
Yeah, to expedite
The sign off on them instead of getting a variance.
and to ensure that the township.
But they
gets the
take-
money.
Right, but everything else still falls under their,
The ZBA doesn't grant a variance because the 10.5 allows it.
Right.
It's not a variance, but they have to go through a process. The ZBA looks at it to make sure they've met all the requirements, they've got the right setbacks, they're going to be hooked up to a well and septic.
but that also is done through the permitting, right?
Permitting comes after the approval. So, we just did it, and the only thing is the time factor. We did our very best, we got that meeting scheduled almost immediately, within the 15 days, because we had to do the notice. But the gentleman ended up having to wait longer than he thought to get his trailer. So, but it worked out in the end for him. But if it could be resolved sooner than the 15 days, that would be great. And is there going to be a fee for this, or are you waiving a fee, or?
I mean,
Are you
I
recommending?
would not charge a fee.
I see no point in fee.
If something like this is
Okay.
happening, why
Well, and
why
they're gonna
burden them
have
more?
fees for the the reconstruction of their,
Oh, yeah, there'll be
Building
fees. I'm
permits.
just making sure that,
County,
right.
because we
Whatever.
have to charge him under the ZBA, we had to charge him the $450 fee.
Ooh, yikes.
So the township board didn't waive it.
all right.
So if the township, and this is something the township board can do, is say, when they look at this, they can say,
So you guys
We
want to
would
waive
recommend no
fees,
fee.
but there's a cash of equal to 1%? I mean,
Well, that's a bond, right?
It's bad, yeah.
You get that back.
The fee for the review right now.
no,
would be $450 for
the 1% is a bond to guarantee the removal of the temporary dwelling before the people can get a C of O, a certificate of occupancy for the
They get
house.
it back, right?
Oh, yeah, they get it
Yeah.
back. They get every penny back, but it's
Right.
just,
I think that's still good.
We're not waiving that fee. We're waiving the application fee.
pretty sure, I mean, if someone has a house that's destroyed, I mean, finding your keys is an issue, let alone getting a bond.
Right.
well, a cash bond or letter of credit, although banks are not giving letter of credits anymore, I guess, and I know they do, but, for, the applicant had trouble going through a bank and getting a letter of credit, so he put up a cash bond.
So how did your motion go there, Nick?
So we're gonna remove 10.5 and add the new temporary emergency dwelling language to general provisions, section 2.34.
Recommending no application fee?
Well, there wouldn't be,
Well-
that wouldn't fall into it anyways, because
No,
that
but-
only falls into the ZBA.
But
so long as-
if you make a recommendation to the township board saying that the planning commission,
But is this going
planning
to the
commission
township
recommends
board?
no,
Well, I think we're back to, I think the planning commission by our ordinance should hold a public hearing, hopefully in September. Then we would make following that, if there wasn't any violent disruptions, we would recommend to the board meeting for the board to approve the ordinance in their October meeting.
Well, they always have to do an application. I mean, application isn't necessarily in the zoning ordinance. That's a procedural thing you have up front. Every community's application process is different. Some have one catch-all for everything, one have it for every type of use. So it still have to have record of an application that they put in. They have the bond or letter of credit in place, and they've consulted with IDA, whoever, to make sure that's, you know, in the location it needs to be. So that doesn't change. I mean, we're essentially just taking your existing language, putting it somewhere else. You know, we're not confusing temporary dwellings in emergencies different from temporary uses and structures. I mean, that's a whole different thing. So, yeah, I'm not too concerned. I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
All right, so Nick, were you all set with your motion?
So,
Okay, I'll support.
Support.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Draft master plan revisions. This looks really good.
It's not me, it's our marketing team.
Well, I think it looks pretty good.
I do, I agree.
I like the idea that the results of the survey are in here, and the way the chapter 6 goals, strategy, and task were constructed. Otherwise, the rest of it's pretty much straightforward data. Demographics and demographics. Wetlands are wetlands. So I guess I'm thinking we're ready for public hearing. Is that would be the next step down?
Yeah, I like the future land use map. I like the green with the. Like the strategic implementation plan, 7-9. I like that. It's clearly laid out what our plans are, who's responsible. It's near the end. It's like 2 pages from the end.
So when it's all done, we'll have the community input documents in Appendix A. That could be a standalone doc. We could put them in here. And then the resolutions would be in Appendix B, all the, stuff that we'll prepare here pretty soon for everyone.
So who's going to publish for the public hearing? Is Roe or is the clerk? Who normally does that? Because I don't remember.
Put it up for you guys and.
And
email
send
to
it.
You guys, for
Send
you
it.
guys to post it.
All right,
in the
that'd be
local
great.
paper. So what happens here is if you're ready, this separate doc that I sent you is kind of like a cheat sheet. So we're at step number 2 where we're at right now. Not to be alarmed. So we've done all the work, putting the plan together. So now the plan commission has finished the draft master plan, which this is the draft master plan. At this point, you would send it up to the legislative body with a memo saying, hey, we reviewed this as the master plan. We're good with it. And so at that point, the legislative body at their next meeting or wherever they want to take it up can authorize a public hearing, and they could, like at their next meeting, they could put a notice out and say we're going to hear this draft plan, whenever they choose to, hopefully sooner rather than later. And at that point, they can either assume or not assume final responsibility, which means they would, they'd have to, by that, they could approve it then and there, or they can kick it back to you guys to have the final public hearing. And so that's for them to decide. After that's done, of saying, we want this plan, then the notice for the public hearing and transmittal public hearing draft plan to all the surrounding jurisdictions that got the notice, the county planning commission, road commission, MDOT if needed, and they get this document for them to review. And they have, a certain amount of time to look it over. They have I forget the number of days. I should put this in here, but they have X amount of days, like 30 some days to look at it and provide any comments. And then if it's, you can either take comments or whatever it may be. You don't have to, necessarily have anything necessarily addressed. I don't think you will, because everything on your boundaries with other jurisdictions hasn't changed. So that's really nothing I'd be too concerned about. And then there would be a notice, public hearing published in the paper for at least 15 days prior to the final hearing. And then you put in here a resolution by the planning commission, a resolution by the legislative body. And then you send it out back to the other communities saying, here, it's done with, here's the final copy. We've made no changes, or we made changes. And everyone gets a copy of it. So it's kind of paraphrasing it, but it's kind of that simple, if you will. So I provided this for you guys to look at, and I'll just be walking you through those steps. So at this point, it's just having meetings and sending it out. Which is all required under the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. So
Perfect. So did you email this to us?
yeah, there's an email that I think
Okay.
was last
Should we
week.
just forward this draft email to the township board
Yeah, you could forward it.
and then write a memo?
You can write a memo, say we reviewed it.
We reviewed it.
We're satisfied with it, and we have no further comments. And I could provide this in a summary of what's the steps
Okay.
For them. I could do that, and it's just procedures.
Does that sound good to everyone? Are we ready to send this up?
Motion to accept it.
Do we need a motion to accept it? All right.
Motion to accept the master plan draft as presented by Roe to be presented to the township board.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
So then, Alex, when the board gets it, will they understand what their options are, or is that part
Yeah,
of
I will send this
Okay,
with that and maybe a little more detail
good.
for them to know the process.
Good.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So most times they, I don't know this case, but they generally kick it back to the planning commission just to get it done with. Yeah. So
Good job. It looks good.
Those look really good. I love that it's orange and black too.
Yeah. We want to keep the
And-
barn
And I love the barn. I love it.
You guys kind of carrying over what you've already had, and you've had a rich history of planning, and you guys are pretty active. So, yeah, it's your new master plan for your town. All right.
All right. All right. We'll move on to commercial solar farms. Thank you for that email, Dennis.
This
That was
got a lot more confusing.
A
than-
lot.
The stuff that I just sent out that we just got Tuesday, Paul Bowman brought it to me Monday night. There's volumes of information here.
Yeah. So I don't know where you want to start. Share. So a couple things here. What I provided you guys, I just extracted out what you already have in your zoning ordinance to address solar, both, residential, commercial, on the building, in your backyard, and commercial grade as well. It's not bad. It's workable. There's some things I may add or I would want to maybe update. But with that being said, as you all received, and I received the day before, you guys received it, probably the same day Paul did, is the sample CREO guidance MTA members of Public Act 233. But there's also Public Act 233, 234, 235. I don't want to confuse it too much. But here is a sample of steps of what a community can do to be in compliance with the state requirements for commercial solar, wind, and battery storage facilities. Today I had the distinct pleasure, I say that tongue in cheek, of listening to Michigan Associated Planning. They had the same folks from University of Michigan present, and I'll just put it very bluntly, they confused it more than it's already been confused already. So, because there are, and be honest with you, so just so you guys don't feel like you're in the dark, they're theorists and educators, which is wonderful. I've been through graduate school. I taught at graduate school. I understand where they're coming from. But for practitioners, they are not addressing the elephant in the room. They talk about it in three different ways. State requirements, a CREO, workable, some sort of workable zoning ordinance and not workable zoning ordinance. But yet they're saying really the two of them are not workable. What they're not addressing is there's 50 megawatts and over and under 50. Under 50 would come to you guys. If it's multi-jurisdictional, like a giant piece of property that's you guys and Dryden and whoever else, a CREO could be established. But the confusing part is where the county falls in, if they choose to or not choose to fall in, and how that all works out. So that's the same scenario for both solar, wind, and battery storage. This whole thing could get overturned. I'm not really sure. They don't have enough signatures, but it could happen. It's a very convoluted, complicated piece of legislation that has incentives tied into it, and dates, and how much you get if you go through this process opposed to going through this process, opposed to getting no incentives at all. And there's a shot clocks involved, the whole thing. So it is in some ways uncharted territory in Michigan to have something along those lines. Because if an energy provider like Consumers or DTE wants to come in and put in a facility, pretty straightforward, how they get approved, what the zoning ordinance requires or not. So everyone's still trying to figure out what that is. Michigan Association of Planning, along with the University of Michigan, have come up with now, as of 4:30 today, their own draft of a conservative ordinance that would be one that essentially just meets the state requirements. So I've had a similar situation where it's, your attorney and myself were involved with another Lapeer County community. And in that, that situation, he was advocating for meeting the state requirements. However, other attorneys have told me that if you're under that threshold, which would come to you guys, if the state doesn't explicitly say what it is, you could have your own standards about screening and things like that. Now, the other part that, according to the University of Michigan, 2 people said that the state themselves may take up screening and put things in there. And that also in this situation, you should consider the financial costs and what should be applicable and not applicable. Obviously, they've never been zoning practitioners. That's just not how it works. If your zoning ordinance doesn't say it, you can't require it. Picking and choosing winners doesn't work. And so I just want to add that in there because you may hear rumblings of folks hearing this and saying, oh, yeah, that's how it works. I don't know anywhere where you could say pick and choose from the zoning ordinance what's going to apply and not apply for any use. If it's a multifamily or single family, you tell one multifamily you could pick different things based on their financial abilities. I mean, that's never been in question, but the University of Michigan thinks that somehow that's a thing. I mean, the courts aren't going to hold that up. So if you hear this, talk about it. I would just want to make sure that you heard it from me first, so this is just a bunch of malarkey. The reality is there's the question I have not been able to answer from attorneys and other experts is, you have a zoning ordinance that addresses solar. I think you should, if anything, possibly beef it up a little bit and be more specific of what you want in your community. Because if a use comes in your community under that threshold or even above it, you have something to say, this is how we operate. If they want to go to the state, great, go ahead. I don't see the point of adding necessarily the state's requirements in your zoning ordinance. We don't do that. I never do that in my zoning ordinances. If it's something with the DNR or Eagle, you cite, go see the DNR requirements, because their requirements may change. If they change on a whim, all of a sudden your zoning ordinance needs to change too, and you may be obsolete before you even were notified. You could have had one on the book. So that's the thing, is why I err on caution. You control what you control. The state controls what they control. So this kind of attempt to say just meet the state requirements and everyone can do that, I think takes a lot out of local communities when it comes to screening and other things. Another thing that they're not addressing in there is obviously screening. But what about fires? How do emergency vehicles access this? What about sound? They have some of these things decommissioned. There's things that are in there that are just general that the state has, but there's things in there they don't have that I think are appropriate for you guys to consider, which you kind of already have to some degree. Say that, these are our standards in our community. And I don't think you're necessarily breaking any laws. So I want to kind of start, I think the idea, Dennis, here was, because you kind of initiated this, was to start the conversation of, kind of a temperature check of where you are, some of my general comments, and then give you an update as to what this new state law is according to MTA, MPA, MAP, and University of Michigan. There's a lot of things in here that I'll do my best with my team. We're working on it right now because we have a lot of communities looking at this. And I'm not really satisfied with what I've seen. Now, I've not thoroughly looked through MTA. We're reviewing this right now. I have 4 planners, including myself, reviewing this. And the other examples, I think it's possible we could put something together that may be beneficial, that we could add into your current solar. But it's a funny piece of legislation that hasn't taken effect, and no one really fully understands how this works because of the fact that there's a lot of gray in it, with the exception of a few things that are specific. But at the same time, what's not specific needs to be addressed somehow. It can't just be left unresolved. And to what level that will be determined is really tough. That's why DT a while back put out that memo. I'm not speaking for DT, to say, look, we're going to do the things we need to do. Now, I'm reviewing the 130 acre commercial solar up in Chesaning Township right now. And, you know, they're doing their best to address things. There's some things that I think could be worked on, and we'll bring that to them. But this is something that I think in the coming months, as we get more clarity, we can start addressing it slowly, and I'll bring you guys into the fold. But every time they have these experts come in, it's not becoming any clearer. I'm not trying to, make it as if it's a comedy. It's more of a tragedy in this case. So I'm happy to share what information we have, and I'll start drafting up what might be a template, because it could come down to you take an example like this. You have your solar, wind, battery. You have state requirements for certain sizes, 50, 150 megawatts. But then you have your own requirements for under that threshold that you guys could manage. And I don't know necessarily the point of creating a CREO with other communities, when in fact the CREO to begin with is a state requirements in itself. So it's like kind of creating something that is already taken care of, if that makes sense. It's just, like I said, it's just.
I guess my thinking is, I think we should go forward with at least identifying with the members of the planning commission. We're all residential homeowners, and we know what we would like to see to protect our homes.
Yep.
And I don't care if it's 20 megawatts or 120 megawatts, the requirements to me should not change for setback, noise, dust, water control. I don't know why.
Right.
50 megawatts makes a difference versus 20
I
megawatts.
agree.
And I don't
Look, I don't want to put my tinfoil hat and speak out of turn, but to me, it's a way for the large, alternative energy providers, or whoever wants to do this, to have the ability to do massive investments at a scale that skips out the local process. Some of the actors, like in this case, Chesaning, they want to go through the local process, get this done, and not go through the whole state, because the state process appears to be a longer process.
It is.
Well,
Extremely.
right, it's like a year. Here, I mean, it could be a year, but maybe just a few. Be a good neighbor and come through the local process to get their projects done, to make the community happy, as well as save some time. So there's kind of benefits, pros and cons to both processes. In order to put your house in order, I think it's going to take a little work. And, I know we're working on it because we have several communities. I could sit here and say, it's pretty simple. You need to meet the state requirements, and that's it. But the problem with the state requirements, it doesn't address all the issues you would have for anything else. Where's the drainage? Where's the fire? Where are all these things? If we had a giant in the city of Lapeer, a massive expansion of manufacturer, they have to put in a new road so that fire trucks can get around the thing, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about here. How are we addressing this? How are we going to make sure that anything that generates noise, like the what's the word for those inverters, all that, are in the interior, not in the interior? How do we manage, topsoil? How do we manage wires? How do we manage fencing and screening? Because now they're allowing this to be up to 25 feet. I mean, these things are huge. So, vegetation type, soil, what kind of fencing. I've heard fencing from no fencing to, chain link fencing to wood posts with chicken wires. I mean, we're we're talking about a full spectrum of things here. That's for pretty big installation. So, how do you manage those who are, kind of surrounded by it? All these things that are really important to make sure that people are negatively affected about it, just like anything else. So why is it any different? So, like I said, I wish I could tell you clearly at this point what is specifically required. Like I said, there's other folks out there in the industry between municipal attorneys and other planners and academics, and we don't all necessarily agree because we're bringing up concerns about what you would have for any other use. So, so I'll be sharing with you guys stuff. Like I said, this Michigan stuff from Michigan Associated Planning just came out today. I haven't even looked at it, but yeah.
All right, thank you, Alex. I agree. I would like it to be beefier. If we could just, even if when you're going through it, like
Yeah.
whatever we can do to protect the homeowners around it, because it's going to come.
And I don't want to get to a point where we're doing one text change after another,
Do the whole-
and make it really ugly. I want to get to a point where we have something that's pretty sound, that then you guys are just picking up some of the dimensional stuff, and then we kind of plug it in at the time. So,
I guess, Alex, I'd like to reach a point with the planning commission that we would define the criteria that we would like to see. We don't have to put it in an ordinance or
Yeah.
anything like that, but I think our current ordinance is weak. It says a 60-foot buffer, and I'm seeing 300 feet, I'm seeing 100 feet. And I know the noise was addressed by DTE, water was addressed, the grades were addressed, the type of soil.
you may not have DTE coming to town.
Exactly.
You may have, like we saw in the message board, one of the folks up in northern Michigan was saying, we had an applicant come in and they've gone bust 3 times, changed their names, and they have lawsuits in other states. Okay, great. It's not DTE. God knows who it is, right? So, yeah, I mean, letter of credit, decommission, all these things. So we'll have the state stuff, but then I think you should have the stuff that are important to your community.
Right.
And so I'm very aware of that.
I
So
think
drawing the
DTE
line of what's the balance there, because, and then if anything, do we actually have to put in the state requirements in your zoning ordinance? I would say to address that, but then they say, well, I've heard, and I'm not going to repeat someone else's words, but I've said, someone told me, well, you have to have the state requirements in your text because, we don't want them having to go to the Public Act 233 to go find that stuff. Well, they do for everything else. They got to contact the DNR. They have to contact Eagle. I don't have every environmental for every industrial thing in your zoning ordinance, so I think, hopefully I'm trying to paint the picture of what you guys are kind of looking at here. Like I said, I am not fully, I talked to, Jason, he works at a firm, we were messing each other. And he's like, they've made it worse. This is him, bright guy. They've made it worse sounding than the last time around. So it's like, at this point, you think, since January was the last time they had this presentation, at this point in August, 8 months later, they have a better understanding. I mean, to address their financial abilities, are you out of your mind? Like, who's going to sit here and tell you, oh yeah, we only have $100,000. Give me a break. They could have 20 million behind them. They don't have to disclose that. How are you going to know what it is? I mean, the things I heard today were just insane to me. I mean, Matt will hear, if you're at that conference, wherever's going, they're going to hear heat. They're hearing heat already. I mean, it was just, these are people who have never worked in this, I just can't defend them. Because so I don't want to say it's doomsday, it's over, it's a work in progress. I think smarter minds will prevail. They're MTA, we're going to look at this, we're going to look at that. It could be a combination of things that we could look at and put something already what you have. You have a decent bone structure. There's some density, if you will, of things that are little meat on the bones to make sure that we have those standards, screening, height limitations, fencing, different
Dust control.
dust control,
water control.
right,
Those are all the
Sound.
things we commonly look at.
right. And I've done that with other towns in Lapeer Township. You guys, did this a while back. So for a while back, it's not bad, but now where it's a different day. So that's part of being planning commission member, being stewards of the community.
Can you help me explain to me there are several three sections in there that discuss that so we talk about protecting homes and standoff distances and stuff like that. But there's three sections that talk about standoff distances, and within those sections they say these standoff distances are intended for health and public safety.
Setback distances?
Yeah, and I don't know how setback distances can control pollution for public safety, but it says if it's more restrictive, then the municipality doesn't, or the applicant can go to the state instead of municipality. So, I think you already answered it, but what I don't understand is what the difference is between a CREO and the state law. It all
There
seems like
isn't.
the same. And if you
To
go
me,
above and
To me,
beyond,
it's the same. So what's the point of creating a CREO when it's just a state law and they can just go to the state? What they didn't address today, and that is it clearly states in there, I'll find that section, it says 50 megawatts and over. If it's under 50 megawatts, it comes to you. And they're saying, no, it could all go to the state. Well, I don't believe it does. That's not the way I read it. To me, it says if it's under 50 megawatts, it has to go to you guys. We're just allowing the big dogs to have free will and just go to the state and get their approvals with their tiny little setbacks of nothing, while you guys can impose 300, right? Or somewhere along those lines. I'm not saying 300, maybe 150, whatever it may be. So that's the thing, is where I'm really not understanding, because they're just saying no, it's just this, and that's how it is. And that everything else is incompatible with the state. Well, we're not talking about the same scales. And so, I just don't know. And so I'll look at MTA. I apologize. It just came my way this week, and you're my third meeting today. So noon, 5, and now 7. So.
Oh my goodness. All right. Any more questions for Alex?
Yeah, this CREO thing that we got from MTA, the second paragraph says that the PA 233 sets up a process to require an applicant to go through the local unit of government for approval, bypassing the commission, the state commission.
Sure.
And it doesn't distinguish 50.
Right,
20,
but then
80.
within that CREO, who makes the decision? If it's 3 townships involved, is it 3 planning commissions? Is it a supervisors? Is it a steering committee? Then does it go to the county? Do they review it when in fact you guys all agree to the state standards regardless? So these are the minutiae, the fine details that everyone's hung up on and is arguing all over the state of Michigan on how this works. Some say it's super straightforward. Other ones are poking holes and saying, well, you're missing this, you're missing that. While other ones are saying, no, it's just to have these things. And they're just missing the point. So I don't want to talk in circles, but like I said, it's you can go to the state at a certain size, you're eligible to go there. Below that, to me, it says you have to go to the local level. So the local level, in my opinion, doesn't have to have the same standards as the state if it's within your jurisdiction. And no one's talking about that, because when I read that, that's the way I look at it. If someone comes to Almont Township and puts up, 49 acres in Almont Township, it's under your control, and they have to meet your zoning ordinance. That's the way I interpret it, and that's the way it is for all the other
I
uses.
think the first documents that came out on this interpreted like that. Anything under 50 megawatts would, but still, I don't care if it's 20 or 120. Our requirements to protect our residential.
Right. So if someone wants to come in, they have 120 acres. They could go to the state, but they also could go to you, and you have your zoning ordinance in place. And if they don't like it, then they can go to the state and follow those rules. But that's the thing nothing else in zoning, and you guys already picked up on this, nothing's like this. There's nothing like this. There's never been anything like this. There's never been anything tied with incentives where there's a $30 million purse and they're saying, first come, first serve, and you get, X $5,000 per megawatt. And some communities are jumping at it. So, that's, why Chesapeake's like, oh yeah, we'll do it now. Because we're gonna get, $600,000 or whatever it is. So, I've never heard anything ever in zoning that says, oh yeah, put that in, you get money from the state. I mean, what? Like, if that's kosher, whatever, have at it. But that's the thing is, this is going to be a real show for the next little bit. We'll see how it. So we're very much on top of it. We're looking at these things and trying to figure out. And the whole state of Michigan, all the members of MAP are asking these questions, and they've had this. So when I get it, I'll forward it to you guys. It's like a frequently asked questions where they address some questions and stuff, but I'm not necessarily sure if they really get it.
I think we need to make sure that we make it. What if we go forward with creating a CREO or what have you? If this law goes through, for sure, I think making sure that we drive people to come through us instead of bypassing or giving them the excuse to bypass us and go through the state, and namely like standoff distances and stuff like that. I think that would be very important, because what the state doesn't know is what our fire department is capable of doing. You mentioned the fires. They're not caring about ice sheeting off in the wintertime and potentially killing somebody. The other thing that I think it was section 225 in that law was the talking about that these sites have to meet all state and federal environmental requirements. And I don't know how us as a municipality are going to be capable of doing an environmental impact study on every single applicant.
Well, they don't. You don't. They do. They have to provide that to you.
The applicant?
They have to demonstrate what they're going to do.
I didn't see that anywhere in the section.
And that's how these generally work. But so my thought just is we need to make sure that your zoning ordinance, what you have, we reinforce with the things that I think may be important, so you guys have something in place. Because I think when someone gets sued, it's going to come back to you have a process in place. If you have no process in place, then it's very hard to mitigate stuff. But at the same time, the fine thing between the attorneys that argue on this, and I've heard this, is if you're asking way more than what the state requires, then it's going to be like ridiculous. If you have 1,000-foot setback, I mean, they're going to laugh at you. I mean, they're going to take you to court and you'll lose, right? But if you have something in that range, and Michigan did say that, if you don't have 50 for the decibels, 55 or 50 or whatever's less noise, that's acceptable. But it doesn't say that in there. They're just making that up. Like I said, take their stuff with a grain of salt. But I'll look and see and review this, and then if you guys want, I can come back with some comments to this where I would track changes and show you the things I would add in or put in so that it's a little more robust. And that you're somewhat in compliance, you're addressing some of the same things, but it fits more for your community and those I've seen in Lapeer County and other places.
Yeah, and I agree with Brian. I think we all accept it as a legal permitted use, but that would give us an idea of what you just laid out, Alex, an idea of what we think that should be, and at least we would say, well, adjust this, adjust that. And I agree with Brian that we'd want them to rather come through us than go to the state and then get dictated to.
And so Michigan, University of Michigan folks, those two folks, were saying that you shouldn't have this as a special land use, which, like, why wouldn't you? Because, it would, you wouldn't qualify with the special land use standards, as you guys know what they are. But, if it's under the certain size, my belief is that you can allow it in certain districts. The state, at their scale, they're saying that it can be in any district. So it's like, so what, we're gonna allow commercial grade solar to be in single family residential district? I mean, and so there's all these things that the small details of where the rubber hits the road that are where my questions lay. And I don't think anybody's really uncovered it or been real detailed enough. And that's where between the lawmakers, the theorists, the university, and us practitioners, there's a lot of disconnect right now of like we're poking holes through it while they're supporting this while we don't agree with that, and so
2 years from now.
hopefully not.
Yeah, I'd like to see.
Sure, I'll be happy to pass it out, but I'm more confident that MTA probably has a better understanding of what might work.
I think what Kevin and I saw, the representatives from DTE, they're willing to bend over backwards. It's the ones that are not DTE that came up in discussion that didn't do a good job.
Right.
And the ordinance should drive them to doing a good job. I mean, a workable ordinance.
Yeah.
Whoever decides on a workable ordinance.
I have a question here about creating a CREO. It's an ordinance that provides for development, utility scale, blah, 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 that is no more restrictive than the provisions included in section 226. What's the point of even creating a CREO then?
That's what we said today. when
I
we
mean,
heard this.
I just want to get it out and make the statement. It really makes no sense to even consider that.
What they're really doing here is knowing that these are going to be large scale because the public utilities have a goal to meet X amount. Like battery storage right now is like 1% of the overall goal. Like the thing is, I forgot, it was like how many megawatts. We're relatively close. We're about third way through in the solar for the state of what their goal is for energy independence, and kind of the same thing for turbines, wind turbines. The battery storage is far behind. So what they're trying to do is knowing that whoever's going to invest this time and money and all that, they're not going to go small. They're going to go huge. And they're going to be probably likely to be cross jurisdictions. And so they have that catch-all. And it's like, you have to form this, but you have to do what we already said to begin with. So, like I said, we're going to find out. So,
But I can say too, Almont has a high-intensity transmission line through the township, and that's vulnerable for, I don't think it's likely in the near future, but we do have one of the things in place that attracts solar energy.
yeah.
Is that power line. I don't know how many other communities it runs through, but obviously it doesn't just run through Almont.
Did I mention that when I was did I talk about Chesaning, the MSU experts before I was here? No.
No.
No, not that.
Okay, so for Chesaning, they had experts from a sound engineer out of Massachusetts.
Yes, you did.
I did?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Okay, and MSU. So there's a lot of interesting technology now that makes these technologies better suited for the needs of the community. That MSU expert, I don't know if she's from Canada or from Denmark. I don't know if she had a unique accent, but she studied abroad as well. But I mean, these panels now are just like, they're almost down to glass, metal, some plastic pieces, and very few, like metals that are conduits for this stuff. I mean, like some sand. I mean, there's not much to them.
They become more efficient.
They're becoming far more efficient.
So the footprint gets smaller.
Well, yes, that's a theory, but the thing is, they're going to have a lot of footprint, but the absorption of it is like exponential from 20 years ago. And the other thing that was interesting to me was they said that places like Arizona, Colorado, places that are sunny, they don't make the best environments for it because the temperature drops are so big it just really messes with their ability to absorb. So they want to be more temperate climates where, here it might be 90 but 70 at night. Well, in Colorado it could be 95 and then down to 60 for high 50s at night because it's a semi-arid climate. So that doesn't do well, or like in Arizona, it doesn't do well for the solar panel. So that's why they're interested in having it here, which I never knew that until they told me. So
60-degree swing in Arizona, easy. 60 to 70 degrees, easy.
All right. Any more questions for Alex? All right, perfect. Thank you, Alex, for all your hard work and okay. All right, we're gonna skip engineering. There's nothing there. Tracy, Zoning Board of Appeals.
Before we move on,
Yes.
Madam Chair, quick question.
Yes.
We did receive 2 documents from Dennis regarding the commercial solar farms. Do we want that included in August meeting minutes?
That would be great.
Okay, both documents that were sent today? Okay,
Yes.
I'll make sure that's included. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We did have a ZBA meeting. We had the residents that were going to do the temporary for the fire, and we did approve it. And then that's when we decided it needed to be looked at so that someone didn't have to wait 14 days or whatever to have it approved.
Thank you. All right. Ida, Zoning and Building Report.
I'm still working with reliable compaction. We require 10 prints and a PDF. I've got 4 prints, no PDF. I did get a check. So I'm still trying to gather everything so it can go out to review. But other than that, I have not received anything.
All right.
Oh, I do want to make one comment. I don't know if everybody knows, but the former helicopter location, that was bought.
Oh,
That is under new ownership now. And he has a road maintenance company. So he will be doing something on that site that's kind of, it's more of a truck parking, so his trucks can park there so far. So we'll see.
okay. All right. Any general comments from the Planning Commission?
Yeah, I found out today there is going to be a supervisories meeting at the fire hall next Tuesday. Ida, do you know anything about that?
I wouldn't be privy to that.
Following that meeting is an MTA meeting, and might be, I think it's 7 o'clock at the fire hall on August 20th, and it might be beneficial for planning commissioners if they care to attend. Maybe I can get more detail. I just caught that today. So there's a supervisories meeting, Almont is hosting, and then the head of MTA is going to be here to host an MTA meeting. So I'll try to get more information from Paul or somebody here. All us know.
Supervisors, meaning other local
Township supervisors are coming.
Coming
is
here.
hosting it.
Yes.
Following the supervisors meeting, MTA is chairing a meeting headed by their CEO, I guess. So anyway, I'll try to get some more detail, but I'd be interested in going myself. That's all I got.
I just want to say congratulations, Dennis Swears, new township trustee.
Thank you.
I am so glad, and I would like to request that you are our liaison from the board to our planning commission. So, and if anyone else would like to email the board when Dennis is sworn in, that would be greatly appreciated. All right,
How
November
is that?
12th, right?
in November? Well.
Or whatever the date is.
The election's in November, the general election.
I think they told us we got to be sworn in by the 26th of
Yeah,
November.
the end of
First
November.
New board meeting will be December.
Now, would those appointments be at the discretion of the new supervisor?
Yes.
Just trying to clarify.
Yep.
Gary Grossbeck.
And I think
Email him.
So, we're gonna work. I think you're the only one that I know of.
It would have been Jeremy, but, okay, but he backed out. But so who took his place? You took Jeremy's place, correct?
I took Steve's.
You took Steve's.
I think he took Jeremy's.
I think,
So-
yeah.
Or was it vice versa?
So would either of you,
I think you
Steve
took
had it, Steve did
Jeremy's.
his 4 years, but I don't know who, and does it start over?
I mean, whoever was appointed, would that coincide with their term, or would it start when you started? Yeah, interesting.
Well, I'll look it up. I know it's all posted, so I'll look up.
It may fall on one of you two gentlemen as well then. No?
No.
Dennis asked, and we looked it up. Dennis, yourself, and Matt. The only ones who expired.
Okay.
Andrea Tracy's 25.
25.
Mike and Brian might be done. I don't know, I'm trying to go by what you told me. I don't know.
Oh, we'll find
You
it.
guys are 26 anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
this lists, yeah, Ryan and I 26, Tracy 25, Andrea 25, and then Dennis and Kevin 24. This is 12/31.
Well, congratulations again. All right. Any other comments?
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Meeting adjourned.